Jason MacKenzie and Provincial Constable Cindy MacKenzie spent 16 years together and have 2 young daughters. Cindy was a member of the OPP from 1998 to the time of her death. She took her life after a lengthy struggle with bipolar disorder. Jason and Cindy were separated at the time of her death.
The first, say, 11 years of that was incredible. It really was. She's an amazing person. Our future was planned out. We both had our careers going, had kids, so everything was going like it was supposed to go. It's very incremental. Things start to happen that seem sort of out of character, but because based on the history, you're willing to write those things off as sort of a one-off type of thing, and it's very hard to see what's happening. I remember that the insidiousness of it. So, and what I mean by that is how it slowly, over a course of, say, 5 or 6 years, destroyed her life. I was the type of person who, if you had asked me prior to this taking place or going through this experience, what does it mean to be depressed? I would have said, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get out of bed. That's just, come on, and so, having lived through this, it is impossible, unless you have experienced it, to even begin to comprehend what it means. I would say when they are manic or up, it feels like to them that they are on top of the world. However, to everybody else around them, it's basically just incredibly risky, destructive, unpredictable sort of behaviors that can last from, a period of a few hours to, in her case, in Cindy's case, months at a time. She was a perfectionist with herself, and what I mean by that is she thought she was capable of big things, and would pursue those things to sort of, to the end of the earth, to make sure that she got where she thought she needed to be. But as she sort of descended into, mental illness, one of the things that she would do is she had to, because her mind was out of control, she would try to control every other aspect of her environment, whether it was, anything. Just reorganizing things, but to the point of absolute chaos. Nothing was ever done. You know what I mean? So she would organize and reorganize and organize and I would come home from work and the house would look like a hurricane had gone through it. But she was so obsessive about everything all at once and nothing at the same time, where she would get, dig herself a hole with this specific thing she was doing, and then she'd be on to something else and get nothing done. So almost all her behaviors were compulsive. She would go and she would shop for 10, 12 hours at a time. She would be up all night. She would play the same, it's playing in my head right now, the same CD over and over and over and over and over and over all night long for days and days and days at a time. So there's a lot of very kind of obsessive, repetitive sort of behaviors like that. And then the depressive part of it, again, it's unpredictable, but it's basically crushing depression, where you can't even lift your hand to get a drink of water, days at a time in bed, crying the whole time. And when someone isn't depressed like that, you can tell them all of the things that you think they want to hear, but it doesn't make any difference, right? So, I love you, we love you, you're part of our family, and all those kind of things, but it doesn't, I'm sure it doesn't hurt, but it didn't seem to have much of an impact because she was just so low, And now I realize that it can happen to anybody, regardless of, your background, your history, and just how completely catastrophic it can be. to see somebody suffer, I mean, to hear somebody say for days on end that it feels like every nerve on your skin is exposed because in a, you know, sort of a really depressed state, or hear it called inconsolable mental anguish, or watching somebody engage in behaviors that, you know, that could kill them. They're so self-destructive. I would say, for me, just from my own personal experience, talking to people, like people at the Canadian Mental Health Association, while it did not impact, it didn't change the outcome of anything, it really helped. It really helped me understand what was going on and realize that, you know, while I was technically alone, you know, I mean, I wasn't alone, yeah, and so getting some perspective from experienced people to help you understand what is taking place in your life when you have no point of reference to understand it, I found really helpful. Her committing suicide was not an unexpected result. I mean, obviously it was a shock, but I could see it happening. You know, it's just, so I would alternate, I think, between having hope and not having hope. But my personal experience and Cindy's experience over that period of time was pretty hopeless. The girls had wanted to have a lemonade stand just for themselves. And I said, well, why don't we have a lemonade stand and raise money for something? We raised almost $4,000 for the Canadian Mental Health Association. It was amazing. The Peel Police came up from Brampton with their tactical unit. The OPP from Caledon, Cindy's detachment, sent a cruiser. And what was amazingly humbling was, and I did not expect it at all, was the people that came up to me and in tears. Police officers, just regular citizens, firefighters, in tears, not only thanking us for, you know, speaking out about mental illness, but sharing their own personal stories of some of the things that have happened to them or their partners at work or whatever. I did not expect that to happen. It was very powerful.